Okay, folks, strap in. Today's deep dive, well, let's just say it's a wild one. We're tackling a collection of song lyrics and some prose, and it all seems to tell a story. But it's a bit, how should I put this? Fragmented. Yeah, fragmented and a bit bizarre. Imagine like a dystopian world, right? With a tyrannical count running the show and a mission to save humanity, the whole shebang, from a dying sun. So, are you ready to dive in and try to piece together this puzzle, figure out what happened, who these characters are, and what it all means?
It really is fascinating, how these sources we're looking at, they kind of blend these like almost fantastical elements,
Yeah.
with descriptions of very real global issues. I mean, we're talking about earthquakes, tsunamis, plagues, wars, the whole nine yards. It paints a pretty grim picture of the world, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. It's bleak for sure. And right at the center of all this chaos, we've got Count Cast. And he's portrayed as this almost comically evil figure, like a caricature of a power-hungry dictator. It makes you wonder if the creators were maybe using satire, to make a point about unchecked power and all that.
Yeah, that's a really sharp observation, actually. You see that a lot in the sources, this contrast between these over-the-top, almost absurd descriptions of the Count's wickedness, and then these more, like, factual, almost journalistic accounts of what's happening in the world. It's almost like they're holding up a mirror to society, forcing us to look at the consequences of our actions and all that.
So we've got this world in shambles, right? We've got this seemingly tyrannical count, and then just to add fuel to the fire, we find out the sun is dying, like literally on the verge of exploding and wiping out all life on Earth. Talk about high stakes.
Yeah, and this is where things take a bit of a turn, into like science fiction territory. Because according to these sources, humanity's last hope hinges on this bomb, a rocket, and this four-person crew who are tasked with this pretty daunting mission. Deliver that bomb to the sun,
Right, and this crew, well, they're not exactly your typical astronauts, let's put it that way.
putting it mildly.
We've got Florian, our pilot. Now, he's a botanist, which is interesting in itself, but he also happens to be, shall we say, quite fond of marijuana. Like the sources suggest, he's rarely seen without it. Makes you wonder about the screening process for this mission, doesn't it?
It certainly raises some questions about priorities, let's just say that. And then we have Karina, the weapons specialist. Now, she prefers a different kind of herb, if you know what I mean. Psychedelic mushrooms are more her speed, let's say. Oh, and she also dabbles in a bit of magic.
Magic, mushrooms, saving the world. It's a lot to take in. And then just to make this team even more, well, unique, we have Sanja, the engineer. She's a vegan elf, deeply connected to nature and all that, which, given the state of their world, has got to be a challenge.
And then finally, rounding out this motley crew, we have Christian. He's our communications expert and hacker. Christian is a cyborg, former soldier, heavily augmented with all sorts of cybernetics. He's described as very stoic, the strong, silent type, probably the most level-headed of the bunch, but even he's got his quirks.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it, if these like contrasting personalities, these quirks, if they were chosen on purpose for this mission, like was there some deeper meaning to all their differences, or was this just a recipe for disaster waiting to happen?
That's an excellent point. It's almost as if the creators were playing with these like classic archetypes, challenging our expectations of what a hero should be. I mean, these are flawed, complex individuals, just like all of us.
So we've got this crew, right? This incredibly dangerous mission and a whole lot of baggage, to put it lightly. So tell me, what can you tell us about their journey to the sun?
Well, it's described as incredibly perilous, as you might imagine. They face asteroid fields, meteor showers, hostile satellites, all of that. And of course, there's the intense heat and radiation from the dying sun. Can't forget about that.
Yeah.
The sources even mention an encounter with some kind of interdimensional being, though the details on that are pretty vague. It's almost like a fleeting hallucination, a glitch in the narrative.
Wait, an interdimensional being. Okay, now I'm really intrigued. This is getting good. So they're hurtling towards a dying star, facing all these dangers, and trying to work together despite their, well, let's just say unconventional personalities.
And this is where the story takes a very dramatic turn. Because, as you might have guessed, things don't exactly go according to plan.
Let me guess, the bomb doesn't work.
You're catching on quick. The climax revolves around a fatal error. Instead of stabilizing the sun, the bomb, well, it makes it even more unstable.
So they accidentally nuke the sun, making things infinitely worse.
Yeah, that's got to be a tough pill to swallow.
It gets even more tragic when you realize that this catastrophic mistake, it can be traced back to Florian's fondness for marijuana. The lyrics explicitly state that he forgot to program the bomb correctly because he was, and I quote, too high.
Wow. Okay, so he accidentally destroys his own world because he was, well, a bit too relaxed. That raises some serious questions about responsibility, wouldn't you say?
It certainly does. It's a stark reminder that even seemingly insignificant actions, they can have these huge, far-reaching consequences, especially when you're dealing with, let's say, cosmic matters. But it seems the story doesn't end there. There's another twist, something about a parallel dimension.
A parallel dimension. Okay, here's where things get really interesting. What's the deal with that?
Well, the explosion, it doesn't just doom their world. It also creates this, like, wormhole. It's a theoretical shortcut through space-time, and it leads to another dimension. And this new reality is, well, it's completely different. Different how? Give us the details.
In this parallel world, Count Paste is a, believe it or not, benevolent ruler. And the world is a utopia. It's almost like a mirror image of their own reality. But everything is peaceful, harmonious. And the sun, well, it's stable.
Hold on, so they accidentally destroy their world, but then they stumble into this paradise where the evil Count is actually a good guy? This is getting weirder by the minute.
It's quite the juxtaposition, isn't it? And it raises so many questions about, fate, free will, the nature of good and evil.
Before we get too deep into all that, I have to ask about this one source, Tabulethi, that you mentioned earlier. It sounded completely bonkers, like it didn't seem to fit the narrative at all.
That's one of the most perplexing elements of this whole story. It's this song filled with all these nonsensical phrases, strange noises, and what can only be described as, like, mad laughter. It's almost as if the creators were throwing in this, like, curveball,
Yeah.
a moment of pure absurdity, just to keep us on our toes.
Maybe it's meant to symbolize the chaos and unpredictability of the universe itself.
Perhaps. Or maybe it's just a reminder that not everything has to have this, like, neat and tidy explanation. Sometimes it's okay to just embrace the mystery, the unknown.
So our dysfunctional crew, they arrive in this idyllic parallel world. What happens to them? I mean, they're technically responsible for destroying their own world, right?
They are, but in this new reality, they're hailed as heroes. It seems they're given credit for defeating this villain named Zalazar, even though there's no mention of this Zalazar anywhere else in the sources.
So they're celebrated for a victory they didn't earn. Seems like they just stumbled into the right place at the right time.
It does, doesn't it? And it gets even more intriguing. Florian, the pilot who accidentally triggered the destruction of his own world, he's reunited with this princess named Luna, who, according to the sources, loves him deeply.
Wait a minute, who is this Luna? There's nothing about her in any of the earlier sources.
Exactly. It's one of the
Yeah.
biggest mysteries in this whole story. Who is she? Why does she love Florian? And what role, if any, does she play in this whole grand cosmic scheme of things?
Okay, now I'm dying to know. Do they stay in this paradise? What happens next?
Well, they're faced with a choice. Return to the wreckage of their own world or embrace this new, seemingly perfect life. It's a tough call, isn't it? But yeah, they choose the paradise, they go for the fresh start, leaving all the mistakes and tragedies of their past behind.
I mean, I get it, right? On a human level, wanting a clean slate, a new beginning, but it does feel kind of, I don't know, a little too easy. They cause this massive destruction and then just kind of get a get out of jail free card.
Right. It really raises these questions about responsibility, consequences, all that. They're essentially living a lie, benefiting from a victory they didn't actually earn.
And what about the ethics of it all? Shouldn't they, like, come clean, tell everyone the truth about what happened to their world, that they're not these heroes everyone thinks they are?
Yeah. That's the real dilemma, isn't it? Truth versus happiness. Would revealing the truth actually do more harm than good? Shatter this illusion of this perfect world, cause panic and who knows what else? Or would it be like a necessary step towards healing, real reconciliation?
It's a mess, that's for sure. Like,
Yeah.
they're trapped in this philosophical maze, and every path leads to more problems, more consequences.
What I find really fascinating is how the creators use this whole fantastical scenario to explore these very human struggles.
Yeah.
We all make mistakes, we all deal with the weight of our choices, and we all want that chance at redemption.
Okay, but let's not forget about Count Paste. He's the big wild card here. In one reality, he's this cruel dictator, but in the other, he's Mr. Benevolent Ruler. How do we even begin to reconcile those two versions of him?
Yeah, it's a head scratcher, for sure. Is he really two completely different people in these parallel dimensions, or is there something more going on? Like, what if this is all an act, some elaborate scheme to manipulate both realities for his own gain?
You're saying he's the puppet master, pulling the strings from behind the scenes.
It's definitely a theory worth considering. Maybe he orchestrated this whole thing knowing it would create that wormhole and bring the crew to his utopian world. It's a long game, a really Machiavellian kind of manipulation, you know?
That's a pretty chilling thought, playing both sides, making sure he comes out on top no matter what.
And don't forget, even in this idyllic parallel world, there's mention of this defeated villain, Zalazar. Who is this guy? What if he's the other version of Count Paste? You know, the tyrannical one who got overthrown in this peaceful reality.
Whoa, okay, that's kind of blowing my mind right now. It's like looking at two sides of the same coin, two different outcomes based on the choices that were made. And our crew, they're right in the middle of it all.
Exactly. Their arrival in this parallel world, their accidental heroism, it could all be part of this grand plan, you
Yeah.
know? A cosmic play with consequences no one could have foreseen.
So, to recap, we've got a crew of accidental heroes living a lie in what might be a gilded cage. We've got a possible multidimensional mastermind pulling the strings and a whole lot of unanswered questions. What are we even supposed to make of all this?
I think that's the beauty of it, you know, all these unanswered questions. It's not about finding definitive answers, but more about exploring the possibilities, wrestling with the ambiguity, engaging with the story on a deeper level.
It's like we've been given this puzzle with missing pieces, and we have to fill in the gaps ourselves, imagine what might be hiding in the shadows.
Exactly. And maybe that's the whole point. Life itself is full of mysteries, unexpected twists, moral dilemmas, all that. These sources, as fragmented and bizarre as they offer this unique perspective, you know, this lens through which we can examine our own realities, our choices, our capacity for both good and evil.
This deep dive has definitely taken us down some strange rabbit holes, but I gotta say, I'm hooked. It's a good reminder that sometimes the most compelling stories are the ones that leave you with more questions than answers.
I couldn't agree more. The journey of discovery is just as important as the destination itself, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. But before we get completely lost in the philosophical weeds here, let's bring it back to our listeners. What are some key takeaways from this wild ride we've been on?
You know, one thing that really stood out to me was this whole idea of the dying sun, you know. It's such a powerful symbol, I think. In a lot of cultures, the sun represents life, energy, hope, all that. So a dying sun, it could symbolize like the decay of those things, you know,
Mm.
the loss of faith in the future.
Yeah, that's a really interesting take on it. So the crew's mission, if you look at it symbolically, it's like this attempt to reignite hope, right? Bring back the light to a world that's just been consumed by darkness.
Exactly. And the fact that they, fail in their original world, but then seemingly succeed in this parallel dimension, it just adds another layer to it all. You know, like,
Mhm.
is it really true hope if it's based on a lie, on this misunderstanding? Does ignorance really equal bliss?
It's a good question. It brings us back to those ethical dilemmas we were talking about earlier. It makes you think about the kind of world we're creating, you know?
Hmm.
Are we sacrificing truth and authenticity just for comfort and convenience? Are we, like the crew, choosing to live in this manufactured paradise, willfully ignoring all the cracks in the facade?
Right. These sources, they don't give us easy answers, that's for sure. But they definitely make us confront some uncomfortable truths about ourselves, about society. They challenge us to really think about the consequences of our choices, both individually and collectively.
And then there's Luna, right? She seems so innocent, so pure, but her whole, like, sudden appearance in the story, it's suspicious. Is she really this genuine expression of love and hope, or is she a tool, like a carefully crafted illusion designed to keep Florian happy and complacent?
Her role is really intriguing, that's for sure. It makes you wonder about the nature of love and loyalty, especially in a world where reality itself seems so fluid, you know?
Yeah.
Is her love for Florian real, or is it just a product of this carefully constructed reality she lives on?
It's like we're peeling back the layers of an onion, and with every layer, there's more complexity. We've got these questions about free will, the nature of reality, the ethics of second chances, the power of manipulation, and of course, this search for genuine connection in a world that might just be a carefully crafted illusion.
And that's what I love about these fragmented narratives.
Yeah.
They don't offer easy solutions or neat endings. They invite us to engage with them on our own terms, draw our own conclusions,
Hmm.
and yeah, walk away with more questions than answers.
I love that. It's like the creators are handing us a torch and saying, go explore the darkness, see what you find.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe in exploring those dark corners, we'll discover something unexpected, something that illuminates not just this fictional world, but also our own understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
This deep dive has been a real eye-opener, I gotta say. It's made me question a lot of my own assumptions about heroism, happiness, even the nature of reality itself.
I think that's a valuable takeaway from any deep dive, really. That willingness to challenge your preconceived notions, to embrace the unknown, to see the world through different lenses.
So what final thought would you leave our listeners with? What's the one question they should be pondering as they go about their day?
Hmm, that's a good one. I think I'd ask them this. If you found yourself in that parallel world, living this seemingly perfect life, but knowing the truth about how it all came to be, would you stay? Would you choose comfort and blissful ignorance, or would you search for the truth, no matter how unsettling it might be?
That's a heavy question. I think it really gets to the core of this whole story. It's a question about our values, our priorities, the choices we make when we're faced with difficult truths.
Exactly. And maybe there is no right or wrong answer. Maybe the journey itself, that process of grappling with these complex questions, is the real reward.
Well, it's been another fascinating journey exploring these strange and wonderful sources with you. Until next time, folks, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.